Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a real head-scratcher that haunts so many off-grid power systems. We're talking about what exactly happens when you connect two MPPT charge controllers to the exact same battery bank. If you've ever expanded your solar array and suddenly noticed your controller's acting, well, a little erratic, I promise you, you aren't alone. So let's look at the data and figure out what's really happening under the hood.
Have you ever stared at your solar monitoring and thought, wait, are my charge controllers literally fighting each other? It's a super common scenario. You're watching the charge cycle, and out of nowhere, one controller just dramatically drops its current output, while the other one spikes up to compensate. It creates this totally bizarre illusion of a conflict, almost as if they're, battling for dominance over your battery bank. If you've seen this weird back and forth shifting of charging current, you are definitely not crazy. In fact, it's one of the most frequently misunderstood quirks in solar installations.
Okay, let's dive into this by contrasting what people think is happening with what is actually going on. The big myth here is that multiple MPPT controllers wired to one battery bank will automatically communicate and just perfectly share the charging load. But the reality? It's a completely different story. These controllers do not natively talk to one another. There's no secret group chat. Instead, they independently react to the battery voltage they happen to be sensing. They are completely isolated decision makers that just happen to be working on the exact same battery.
Section 1. The Crosstalk Myth. To really get this, we have to unpack what off-grid users think they're seeing. People have actually coined a specific term for it, crosstalk. Now, this is defined as the apparent back-and-forth shifting of charging current between multiple independent controllers. And hey, if you've observed this current shifting, your observations are 100% valid. The current literally is shifting. But the conclusions people jump to from seeing this shift, that's where things go completely off the rails.
Let's clear up a few of those flawed assumptions right now. First off, people assume the controllers are communicating directly to hand off the load. Like we just covered, they absolutely aren't. Second, and this is a huge one, some folks incorrectly assume that current is backfeeding, meaning they think electricity is freely flowing backwards from one controller into another. While modern MPPTs have internal protection circuitry, this backfeeding assumption causes a ton of unnecessary panic. And third, people see one controller drop its output to zero and immediately conclude, oh great, it's broken. The truth? Not a single one of these assumptions is accurate.
Section 2. The Technical Reality. Let's look at the actual physics here.
So if they aren't broken and they aren't backfeeding, what's the real story? Well, it all comes down to the fundamental law of current conservation. Total battery current, or IBAT, is simply the sum of the current from MPPT1 and MPPT2. It's just simple math. The same rule applies to total charging power. Each controller contributes its charging power completely independently. Think of the battery as a giant bucket simply absorbing the combined flow from two separate hoses. There's no hidden magic here, just basic addition.
So the absolutely crucial point is how they make their adjustments, which brings us to the feedback loop. I want you to think of this as a blindfolded handoff. Step 1, the battery voltage rises as it charges. Step 2, both controllers, which are effectively wearing blindfolds regarding what the other is doing, sense that shared battery voltage. Step 3, they independently adjust their current based only on what they just sensed. The battery itself acts as the shared, unspoken communication link. They aren't chatting with each other, they're just feeling the same battery and making totally isolated guesses about what to do next.
Section 3. The Measurement Missing Link. This is the real game changer. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why so many people get confused. It all comes down to how we're testing our systems. Just look at what happens during a standard charge cycle. At the start, when the battery is really hungry, controller A and controller B might kick off at an equal 50-50 split, pumping in max power. But look at what happens as we get close to the battery's target voltage. It radically shifts to an 80-20 split. As the voltage nears the program target, one controller might decide, okay, we're full, and throttle back its current. The other controller, maybe reading the voltage slightly differently, says, nope, not quite yet, and keeps hammering away with high current. If you're only looking at the total battery current, you just see a slight drop in the overall number, and you completely miss this dramatic, hidden handoff happening behind the scenes.
To actually see this behavior in real life, you absolutely must use dual DC clamp meters. Slapping one meter on controller A and a totally separate meter on controller B is literally the only way to reveal the individual current sharing behavior, the distinct charge stage transitions, and those real-world controller interactions. The problem is, many users just measure the total battery current, which completely hides this dominance behavior.
If you aren't using two independent DC clamp meters, you're flying blind. You're only getting half the story, and you might easily mistake a perfectly normal transition into the absorption stage for some sort of critical hardware fault.
Section 4. Wiring and voltage drops. Let's talk real-world hardware.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is why would one controller think the battery is full before the other one does, right? Why don't they just transition at the exact same millisecond? Well, it all boils down to simple physics. Voltage drop equals current times resistance. Every single wire has some resistance, so if you have different cable lengths running from your controllers to your batteries, you inherently have unequal resistance. As current flows, a voltage drop develops. This means that controller A might literally sense a different battery voltage than controller B simply because its cable is, say, 3 feet longer. Even a tiny, microscopic difference in cable resistance creates different voltage readings, which leads to completely different charge stage decisions. So, breaking it down, there are three main culprits for this imbalance. First, like we just discussed, different cable lengths lead to unequal resistance and voltage drop. Second, mismatched absorption settings. I mean, think about it. If controller A is set to an absorption target of 14.4 volts, but you accidentally left controller B set to 14.2 volts, controller B is going to tap out and reduce its current way sooner, leaving controller A to do all the heavy lifting. And third, differing equalization schedules. This one is super critical for flooded lead-acid banks. If one controller decides to run a high-voltage equalization cycle while the other is just chilling in normal mode, the charging behavior becomes incredibly unpredictable.
Section 5. Setup and safety rules. Let's bring it all together.
All right, now that we understand the physics and the measurement techniques, how do we actually manage this dual controller setup safely and effectively? Here are your rapid-fire best practices to minimize that erratic crosstalk behavior. Number 1, keep your cable lengths and wire gauges perfectly symmetrical to eliminate uneven voltage drops. Number 2, meticulously match your charge profile settings across all controllers. Whether you're running lithium iron phosphate, where you need to match voltage targets perfectly, or lead acid, where equalization schedules have to align, consistency is absolutely key. And number 3, don't just guess. Use individual clamp meter measurements to verify that both controllers are operating exactly as you configured them.
Now, we absolutely cannot talk about off-grid battery banks without stressing a few essential safety warnings. High-current battery banks carry some severe, extremely dangerous arc flash energy. Seriously, always disconnect your solar inputs before servicing the controllers. Double-check, actually triple-check, your polarity before energizing the system. Never, under any circumstances, exceed the controller's voltage open circuit or VOC limits. And this is the big one. Install proper fusing or breakers on every single controller output. Never rely on another controller's protection device to save the whole shebang. Every single unit needs its own independent overcurrent protection. No exceptions.
So what does this all mean? We've seen that what looks like a scary malfunction is usually just the physics of independent voltage regulation playing out across shared cables. Now, the next step is entirely up to you. Safely grab a pair of DC clamp meters and go test your own system. What will your meters reveal? Are your controllers sharing the load perfectly, or is there a hidden, invisible handoff happening right now in your battery room? Let this knowledge empower you to properly diagnose, configure, and optimize your off-grid setup. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. See you next time.